Meghan McCain is, of course, an anti-Trump Republican. She vociferously voted for Joe Biden and promoted him before the election. And so during a recent discussion about Trump's second impeachment hearing and the Senate trial to convict him, she started to really, I guess, rant against the Republican Party and their refusal to hold Trump accountable. We have a few clips of that. Let's take a quick look at the first.
It is very difficult for me to come on this show right now because I've always prided myself on having my finger on the tenor of what's going on in conservative circles. Even when I didn't agree with Trump, I'm not a squish. I'm not someone who went full brainwashed Lincoln Project, that everything that's conservative is a bastion of evil and I must reject it and atone myself. I'm not that kind of Republican or conservative, but right now I cannot defend this. I believe President Trump should be impeached. I believe we have to take a stand and have a fine line about what is acceptable for a president to do or not. He incited a riot, people got violent, people died, full stop.
That last part, I agree with her on. The other stuff, I get it, if you're a Republican, if you identify as a Republican, you can't ever say anything critical of the Republican Party or they'll come for you. So she had to preface what she really wanted to say with this long rant about what a great Republican she really is. But I agree with the overall, the heart of that message, which is Trump should be held accountable. And I'm glad she's saying it.
I love that she made the distinction whether you're Republican or conservative, not and conservative, or I always pay attention to the things that people say. Listen, people go back and forth with Meghan McCain. One week she's a hero because she says something against the political party, which is not. She's probably saying something that should be on the right side of history, and it's right. You can't, with good conscience, defend those behaviors when you know that there were Capitol officers that were crushed to death, killed, and one who had to fight for his life because they were gonna kill him with his own weapon. I think that, so when somebody says something that is right, it reminds me of me coming home with a report card that was decent for my father, and he would be like, that's what you're supposed to do. So Meghan, that's what you're supposed to do. 5 Americans died. You don't get a pat on the back for that. You should, welcome. Where you been? Catch up.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that history will, if you're on the right side of history, it'll pay off, right? Sometimes it's difficult to speak against your own community, in this case, the Republican Party, in order to do the right thing. But I think if people, Republicans specifically, who might agree with Meghan McCain internally, but they might be afraid to say it publicly, just know, objectively what Trump did was wrong. And allowing fear of Trump's base or fear of Trump targeting you to make up your mind about whether or not you're gonna try to hold him accountable, it's not a boss move. Be a boss. Do what you're supposed to do as a Republican lawmaker and hold him accountable. As a lawmaker, period, you should think about the best interests of the country as opposed to the best interests of your party. And by the way, McCain brings up the best interests for the party as well. And then some talk about birthright. I don't know. Let's take a look at what else she had to say.
I think we have to start looking about what's going to happen going forward in the future, because as much as Trump expanded the coalition, he didn't do it enough to bring in full wins. We lost the Senate, we lost the Congress, we lost the presidency. And if people think that the MAGA train is the only train to go forward, I think they're ill-advised. I also think people who think that the whole coalition of Trump supporters are irredeemable and garbage and have no place in the party, I think they're wrong as well. And I hope for healing and I hope for unity. Whether or not it's going to happen, I don't know. But I just want to say, I know this has been sort of a little bit of a rant. I really am doing my best to try and take the tenor of conservatism and populism and bring it on the show, but I cannot defend people who are against impeachment. And I believe it's the right thing to do. I believe historically it's the right thing to do. And I know that I am in the vast minority in this with pretty much me and Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney.
I would love her to elaborate more on what she means when she says she wants to bring the tenor of Republican populism on the show. What does that mean? I'm curious about that. But outside of that statement, what did you think, Ida?
You know, I think that us going to The View and listening to people who are very wealthy talk about issues that affect everyday people who are so disconnected is something that I'm not big for. I mean, I went in for The View and I wanted to represent a voice of people that you've never heard, because I don't come from privilege. I haven't been rich for 20 years. I'm not rich right now. So I've turned it off. I don't want to hear anything anymore by people who live these elaborate lives when they want to chime in on issues where cash registers, cashiers, and people who work at Walmart are struggling. So when I hear Meghan talk, I turn it off. I don't watch The View. I just do, because I just feel like it's very disconnected. And that's the reason why Donald Trump was the president in the first place. Those are all the same people. They are all reality show stars. They're not journalists. They're not, Sonny is informed, Sonny is a lawyer, but when we sit here and listen to these people talk, and Meghan, post-secondary education is what it is. I don't want to hear someone who's disconnected from the people speak on behalf of the people. You sat there and you defended a lot of things that were very problematic with that administration in the name of being a Republican and having the conservative views. You stood by and were complicit. Now that you saw how ugly this thing was, you want to back away and say, I'm in the minority that doesn't stand for this, but you stand for a lot of the policies and practices that oppress other people. So for me, being one of the people that belongs to those groups, I'm not gonna sit here and salute Meghan McCain because she said something that was finally right about something that was done that was very wrong, when she always stands on the side of things that are so oppressive to people of color and Black people in this country.
Oh, definitely. I don't want anyone. I've given Meghan McCain credit sincerely on one thing fairly recently, and it was because she had a child and she realized, oh, maybe paid family leave makes sense. Well, she didn't even say family leave, she said maternity leave specifically. And she deserves credit for that, even though I wish, it didn't have to come to her having a kid to understand the importance of maternity leave. But nonetheless, I agree with you on this. I mean, she's still trying to save the Republican Party as if MAGA was just a phase, but I don't think it was a phase. I think that when you look at Trump's approval rating among Republican voters, that is what Republican voters want. And that's something that Meghan McCain has to really sit and think about and come to terms with. And any Republican who's more sympathetic to her viewpoint, they need to really think about what the Republican Party, based on its voters, represents. And cutting the head of that snake doesn't necessarily mean that snake's dead, right? Trump was empowered by that base, and that base is still around. So we'll see what it's going to morph into next, because it went from Tea Party to QAnon and other lunatic groups.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.